Welcome to Season 5 of Fulfilling Career Happy Life. I'm your host, Randi Roberts, Executive and Career Life Coach. This season, we're exploring one of the most misunderstood capabilities in leadership, courage. Not the dramatic kind, but the everyday courage to step into discomfort, speak up when it matters, make hard calls, and lead forward even when the path isn't clear. You'll hear from executives and coaches sharing real moments that tested them and shaped their careers. My hope is that each conversation invites you to reflect on your own relationship with courage, where it's serving you, and where a braver step may be just ahead. So let's get started. Hi, and welcome to Fulfilling Career Happy Life. I am super excited for this conversation because along our theme of leadership courage, like one of the people I knew I needed to have on this season was my friend and colleague, Michelle Pollack. Michelle has her early career, her first act, if you will, was she was a theater major in school. I guess that's appropriate, right, Michelle? She was
It
a
is.
theater major in school, and then her first career was in the entertainment field. But for the last 10 years, she's been using everything she learned and all her skills to help clients the way I do, running her own coaching business. And so I was really excited for this because, like, courage and authenticity and being bold is so much a part of what I think of with Michelle, and I know what she stands for as a coach in her work. So I know this is going to be a great conversation. So, having said all those words, welcome.
Thanks.
Thrilled to
I
have
love
you.
having these conversations with you.
Wonderful. Okay, so along the lines of, diving into leadership courage, in the work that you do with clients, how often does courage come up as part of the discussion?
I think it would be challenging to have any coaching relationship at all without courage, being a part of the conversation. Because, one of the biggest things I believe is that people think they need confidence or they want confidence, but I really believe that confidence is a result of having courage.
Wait, hang on one sec. Confidence is a result of having courage, because I've done some thinking around this too. Tell me how you define the two.
So, in order, like to me, confidence ebbs and flows. Confidence isn't something that we just naturally have all the time with everything we do. And the way that we gain confidence, especially as adults, is by having the courage to try new things, to up level to the place that we're wanting to get from where we are now. So I didn't really give you a definition, but I gave you, I mean, to me, courage is something that you can cultivate within yourself, even if you are scared,
Yeah,
right? In fact, courage
yeah.
is not the absence of fear, it is the desire to act despite the fear because of what you want for yourself, your career, your life, your company, any of those things.
Yeah. That I like that. I like that. And I like what you're saying about the inner relation between the two, because I did some writing on courage and confidence recently, and I see it the same. It's kind of a loop in a way. It's like, confidence is something that you can build. Courage is something, it's like an act you take, a stand you take, whether or not you have the confidence, and then it builds the confidence.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, really
Exactly
cool.
right.
I'm glad you brought that up. So, I don't know if you define them this way, but what do you see as like the courage blockers that you encounter with clients?
hmm Um, the biggest courage blocker with my clients tends to be perfectionism or a fear of the inability to achieve a goal. Like the fear that, what if I can't make it happen? So the fear becomes paralyzing and keeps them from having the courage to try. Hopefully not permanently. Hopefully that's why we're having the conversations we're having. But I think those two things, needing to it to be perfect, so needing to know that they know exactly what results they'll get is part of it. Because if you're like, that doesn't really require a lot of courage when you know what results you can get. But, and then if you're going for something new and you don't know what the results are going to be, that generally requires courage.
Mhm.
So that's what I would say are the two biggest obstacles.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, that perfectionism. And it's so ironic because sometimes that perfectionism can block us taking courageous action to the extent, like, if the problem is we don't know if we're going to get it perfect and we're afraid of what the outcome may be, we can guarantee what the outcome is by not doing the thing. You're not going to get
Exactly
anywhere.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we can talk ourselves through it, but it's so prevalent. And I find it's really prevalent even in people in whom you wouldn't expect it. Like people that you may think of as bold and they've got it together. They still, wrestle with this too.
I wrestle with it. I say this to my clients all the time. When I'm going into a new direction with my business, or another one that requires courage that can be another courage blocker is, I'm going on a little tangent here, but I'll come back because this is something I have wrestled with, is worrying about how it's going to affect somebody else, or if someone else is going to be upset with you, right? Engaging in challenging conversations or conflict of any sort requires courage. So you're worried about what the result of that is going to be because you're worried about the other person's reaction
Yeah.
or, being liked. That's a courage blocker. But I think for me, I think anytime we're up leveling in any way, our natural human reaction is fear of what if I can't do it?
Right.
That is the brain's natural reaction. So I've kind of trained myself to recognize that fear as an indication that I'm going in the right direction. But sometimes it takes longer than others to actually take the action needed, which requires the courage. Um, because usually when we're leveling up, we have to allow ourselves to be a beginner of sorts.
It's hard.
And as adults and high achieving, successful adults, that's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. it, what you just said is really powerful, which is, if up leveling in any way creates that anxiety, gets you out of your comfort zone, and brings on that fear and, maybe the need for courage, you have learned to take on that, my word is anxiety or, discomfort as a sign that you're on the right track.
It's not quite that simple because there are questions that I ask myself in the process, but it kind of is that simple because if the fear is around those, like, what if I can't, or what if I get rejected, or, well, like, yeah, that's an indication that I don't know that where I'm going is exactly right, but I'm headed in the right direction, like you said, right? And the only way I find out if it's the right direction or if I need to shift gears and go in a different direction is by trying.
Yeah.
And it does require courage to do that. It taking action when we feel scared in any capacity at any age at any time requires courage. I think it's the most important thing in going after anything we want in our lives.
Yeah.
Courage.
Yeah. That it almost feels to me like you really can't have the good stuff without taking courageous action.
Yes. I mean, yes, that's so true. I never really thought about it that way, but yes, I do think that's true.
So you said something really interesting, which was you said at one point you said, well, it's not that simple. There's some questions that I ask myself, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So what is the process that you take? Maybe you take clients through, maybe you take yourself through to get, the visual that comes to mind for me is when I'm up at the lake with a bunch of friends and we're at the edge of the dock and who's jumping first. And I am usually the last one in, which is kind of funny. But so what
Yeah.
is it, how do you take clients through it? How do you take yourself through it?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, with clients, particularly my one-on-one clients, it really depends on the person. I really have to get to know each person that I'm working with to understand what's in the way of the courage. And so my line of questioning for them will likely be a little bit different, except there's the same thing behind it that I do with myself. So maybe I can share what I do with myself because I think the first thing I always ask is like, okay, what's the thing I'm really afraid of here?
Mhm.
And I usually keep asking that until I like, and then what? And then what? And then what? Right? So there's two parts to that. The first part is acknowledging the fear for what it is. And then I go into, okay, I actually explore what happens if that thing that I'm afraid of takes place. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen if that takes place?
Mhm.
So the first part is in acknowledging the fear itself. And then the second part is in taking myself to the worst possible scenario because what that does, both for me and for my clients, um, is allows us to see that I can handle it. Whatever the worst case scenario is, I can handle it. But if I don't actually go after it, I'm going to be, I mean, the least upsetting thing is that I'll be in the same exact place that I am right now. And the most upsetting thing is that I will have been the one who stopped myself from going after it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I say that in a way that makes sense?
It certainly makes sense to me. I guess our listeners will tell us, but I think so. Um, because what you're talking about is, thinking about what am I afraid of and what's the result of that? Like what really is the risk here? Can I
Hmm.
deal with it? And once you've broken that down, it sort of demystifies it somehow and you figure out how you can deal with it. So then you can take action. The thing and the element of us blocking ourselves is so true. I mean, the good news in that is we can get out of our own way if we're what's in
Right.
our way. Um, so you know, looking at it and sort of demystifying it can really enable us to take it on. But the thing that you touched on that I think is also interesting is sometimes it's helpful. I find with my clients, it's helpful to think about what's the risk of not doing the thing.
Yes. And okay, so there's another thing that I do with my clients around this. I'm so glad you just brought this up. And I just did this with a client this week. Um, I use a tool called the Inner Navigation System, which I discovered from another coach. Her name is Megan Hellerer, and she has a book, and I'm blanking on the name of her book right now. But she has a tool called the Inner Navigation System. And it's brilliant. And it helps you to reconnect, get out of your head about all of it and into
Mhm.
your body and how things feel. And so you imagine how you feel with something that like you just love, that just makes you feel good when you think about it. Right? Like there's just and you think about it and then you go into your body and notice how your body feels. And I'm doing this real fast because but and then on the flip side, you imagine something, not something traumatic, but something you really don't like that like, makes you feel ugh, like
Mhm.
gross. And you take it out of your head and go into your body and notice how your body feels about that. And she refers to these as the first one is warm and the second one is cold. So like hot and cold, when we play that game with our kids when they're
Yep.
little. And if you like when you feel in your body in that warm way, that's a sign that you're warm. You're moving in the right direction. And when you feel in your body more of the cold way, you're not moving in the right direction. It's not aligned. And so I take a client through a scenario, both sides. Like imagine that you have done this a year from now. And what are your days like? what does your life look like? And then we go into how does your body feel right now? Then we go into imagine you haven't done it. Imagine that it's off the table. You've decided you're not going to go after this. How does that feel in your body? And it is remarkably effective. Now it's funny, I've actually never used this with myself, but it is remarkably effective with clients. It is one of the greatest, it's a new thing I discovered from simply reading her book, and people really respond to it because they can really relate to that feeling of something they love and something that kind of makes them shudder.
Yeah.
You know, and to be able to ask yourself a question and truly give yourself the option to go down both roads and see how your body responds when you think about yourself in that situation is such an indicator of what you truly want, regardless of the fear that you have.
Yeah, it's actually I find it very intriguing because sometimes when we're preoccupied with something or we're, stuck in perfectionism or whatever, sort of changing the subject can help unlock things. And my clients, mostly in the corporate world, who I used to be, we live in our heads. And so
Yeah.
sometimes pulling it into our bodies can really like make the realization clearer.
You know, I am a recovering like neck up person. Everything. I thought about everything like until I couldn't think anymore. And so for me, when I learned to get into my body about things, um, it was really kind of life-changing. And I think you're I think what you're saying is 100% spot on, particularly in the corporate world. You know, I work in so many different industries and I work with quite a few creative people. And then I work with very corporate people. And it's very natural for creative people to get into their body. It's not necessarily natural for them to listen to their bodies, but they can get there very easily. But corporate people, um, it's a profound realization for them when they reconnect to their body.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, there's this entire intelligence system that I've been ignoring that's telling me things that are actually really, really important. But it takes, like, listen, when we are scared about something, our body goes into fight or flight when we go to do it.
Hmm.
So it doesn't always mean that you listen to your body just because it's saying no danger, danger, danger. Sometimes you have to connect the brain and the body and the things you're learning in order to be able to go, okay, I'm safe, recalibrate your nervous system to take yourself forward. And that could happen as something as simple as picking up the phone to make a phone call if there's something that's really scary for you about what's going to happen during that
Yeah.
phone call,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's amazing. It can take you longer to get up the courage to make the call than it will to be on the call. Something what you're talking about, I think is really important. And I do, some of what the work I do with my clients is around energy leadership, which
Hmm.
is really impactful for some clients. So one of the things that along those lines that I want to add to it, it's not just the fight or flight, which is just our response as mammals to stress. Like you don't know what's
Yeah.
stressing you, but it's absolutely normal reaction. But it's in addition to fight or flight, it's also freeze. And that may be one that shows up most frequently is we get sort of paralyzed by the thoughts and the overthinking and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, there are people who actually black out a little bit and freeze.
Wow.
Like there are people who kind of go black in freeze. It's wild. Um, and there's also fawn, which is a whole other thing. That's really fascinating. So it's this is a thing, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like this is really real. Um, and I will say I used to be like the least courageous person ever. I was so scared of anything going wrong, or like, what if I was so terrified, particularly in my early 20s, about what if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't work? Which is ironic because at the time I was performing, I was auditioning for Broadway shows, I was dealing with rejection all the time. It was never working. But there were so many other things in my life that I was terrified about. And I kind of like had to throw myself in the deep end of taking risk because there was a part of me inherently that knew if I don't get comfortable with the possibility of things not working, I will never have the life I want to have.
Mhm.
So I think like I don't know how I knew and understood that at the age of 24, but I did. And I think it's the biggest part of all of this is learning to get comfortable with the discomfort of living life.
Yeah. Yes, to all of that. And it's interesting. It occurs to me, as with so much of the work that I do with clients, and I know you do with clients, is mindset is a big thing here. It's like redefining yourself from someone who is afraid, is cautious, risk averse, whatever you want to call it, to someone who can handle that, someone who
Hmm.
can fix it if it goes wrong,
Hmm.
that, and someone who needs it.
Yes, and what I love to do in these scenarios is like I start to call these th you have to have the mindset, but then you actually have to take action. Otherwise, if you just think I'm just going to change my mindset, you're not actually going out to see if changing your mindset has worked, right? So you have to actually go out and try things to see what happens when you take a risk. And sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. So I love to refer to those things as science experiments because when you think about the viewpoint of a scientist, they don't put it's not a positive or negative spin on an experiment not working. It's simply information that they take with them as they move forward and iterate the experiment, right? Like I often liken it to cancer research because no one's gotten it right, but they haven't stopped trying. And they keep getting closer and closer and closer because they don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and start fresh every time. Every time they look at what they've done and what they're going to bring forward with them into the next time and that what they're going to let go of.
Yeah.
And I think if we can reframe ourselves so that it's not so personal and there's not so much shame associated with something not working or with failure, and also looking at what's the first step we need to take and try, not like what's the whole process. Because that can get so overwhelming when you think about where you want to be. Well, what's the first step to get you where you want to be? Let's just start there
Hmm.
and see how that goes.
Hmm.
Then we'll look at the next step. Um, so, I lost my train of thought.
No, but I love what you're saying because it does, like, it takes, we can have courageous thoughts, but until we have courageous action, it doesn't really
Yes,
exist.
it's both. It
Yeah.
is both. And the other, what I love to call like what happens when you get into an action like that, and then you look at the results of it, both positive and not the way you wanted it to go. Notice I didn't call it negative. You're having a corrective experience around what you think about trying new things.
Yeah. It it's really powerful. You have to get out of the starting gates. And like you know me, Michelle, I'm a sticky note person, and this quote will look familiar to you because it comes from our business coach. You can't steer a parked car. So you have to take that first bold step, and it might be small. Just because it's bold doesn't mean it's, you're slaying a dragon, but it's you take that first step, and then once you're in motion, you can make corrections.
I love what you just said because I think it's such a misnomer about coaching for so many people, which is that you said it doesn't have to be huge, right? Like that first step can be small. And I think so many people think about coaching and they think this person's going to tell me I have to like go big or go home. No, that might not be right for what you want or what you're doing. And most of the time, it's the littlest things that make such a big difference in how you're showing up, how you're being received in the world, and how you go after what
Yeah.
you want.
It just can change the trajectory, and it's amazing what difference a little shift can make. Okay, so I'm
Yeah.
aware of time because I try and keep these episodes
Yep.
to
Good.
the length of time it takes me to walk my dog. So one last question, which
Yep.
is around like what's one thing you wish every leader knew about courage, maybe about the emotional reality of courage?
I love that you threw in the emotional reality because I think it's something that I pointed to earlier, which is that I think our society has kind of sent this message that discomfort is bad. And so we all try to avoid discomfort, and there is no growth without discomfort. And courage is comes when you need to take action despite your discomfort or the idea of the discomfort that's going to happen from taking the action. So I think it's that idea of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable
Yeah.
and letting that mentality move you towards the things that you really want.
It profound words. It's funny because we're taping this at noon, and I've already had that conversation with two clients today, literally,
Yeah.
about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and really embracing that. Oh, this has been great. Michelle, this conversation was every bit as thought-provoking as I knew it would be. I appreciate it. We covered a lot of ground. I
We
mean,
sure
talking
did.
about, confidence and courage and how they work together and how they build each other and how perfectionism oftentimes is a real blocker and ways that you can summon courage. And then ending it with getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, I think is the perfect landing spot. So if people are equally as intrigued by what you're saying as I am, how can they find you? How can they follow you?
The best place to find me is on my website. I'm not the best on any social media. I'm very inconsistent. So you can find me on my website, and I send out weekly newsletters that you can sign up for there. And that's probably the best way to kind of get to know me and my work.
Okay. And I'll put the link in the show notes, but what is your website for
My
folks?
website is just Michelle Pollack, Pollack.com.
Okay, great. I'll make sure that's in the show notes. So again, Michelle, thank you. I really appreciate you joining me for the show and giving me the time. It's fun as always.
Thanks, Randi.
Thanks so much for listening to Fulfilling Career, Happy Life. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe, follow, rate, and review. Do all the things to show your support for this podcast. It helps other professionals who want to feel more energized about their work again find us. And if you want to take this thinking further, please follow me on LinkedIn, where I share content on a regular basis. You can also get on my email list by downloading the Career Satisfaction Assessment or through my website. All these links are in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in. I truly appreciate that you make the time for yourself to listen to the show. See you next week.